Gamers, I don't have to be the first to tell you, Spruce villages in Minecraft look weird as shit. So what I'm gonna do is transform this little village into a bustling medieval town. We'll be upgrading all the existing weird-ass buildings and improving the landscape and layout along the way. Also, this video was inspired by two other amazing builders, Shera and Crypto, so be sure to check them out. Firstly, we needed to find an existing village, and after some searching, I found the perfect one. The next step was to copy every existing build and transfer them up to a bit of a building platform and start transforming each and every one. Now, dude, these houses are absolutely whacked out of their minds. A fully bricked up roof, as in like, it's just solid bricks, and walls consisting of pure unadulterated cobblestone. Yeah, it's not a good look. And so that leads us to the transformations, starting with this little house right here. It took a bit of time to settle on a roof design that's similar to the original but looks more normal, and I also ended up changing the walls from cobblestone to polished diorite and calcite, which I also ended up changing a little later on. Onto the interior, I made sure to add blocks I felt every villager needed and laid them out in an interesting and pleasing way. The next house is pretty unique, and I wanted to stick with the idea of having that T shape with the entrance being wood. So after increasing the overall size a little bit and adding in our pillars, walls, and roof, I decided on lowering the entrance section a little more and continued on with the detailing. I added windows with little roofs above, lanterns dangling from those, and even added some planter boxes below those too. Moving inside, we had a little more room than the previous house, so I went with a bit more of a spacious design, including furnaces on shelves with crafting and storage below, along with a bed too. Next up, it's onto this little boy here, which I didn't realize was actually a blacksmith until I went inside and saw a smelter thing. Now knowing this was a blacksmith, I opened up this side wall to make it into a sort of open workshop or something. I think it looks cool. I also prettied up the interior, added an internal firewood storage and some external bits and bobs as well. The next building was similar to the previous T-shaped one, except this one was also a smeltery of sorts. I probably should have checked what these buildings were before upgrading them. Now after getting the roof perfect and filling in the walls, I also made this one a bit of an open workshop and added a little roof here too. Heading on inside, I gave this one a similar treatment to all the rest, just made it overall better, you know? On to the next building, which I still don't really know what it is, but it's another T-shaped one, and I decided to take it a different way from the others by having all the roofs at the same height. With the roofs complete, I added a cute chimney, and this was the point where I decided to change our block palette. Instead of polished diorite and calcite, I changed it over to a bit more of an off-white color using bone blocks and smooth quartz. I also decided to implement a single layer of textured andesite and cobblestone along the bottom of every building too. Continuing on with our build, I added some arches in the roof, placed back the grass field, and built some planter boxes too. Onto the interior, I didn't really know what this build was. Now consulting the wiki, it's a butcher shop, which I think I kind of reflected well in the interior. Next up, the library. This is probably the weirdest looking build of them all in my opinion. There's no redeeming it, so I just started completely from scratch. Now, I intended to go much bigger than all the previous builds with this one because I had a really cool idea in mind for the interior. I wanted an entrance area that led to an almost observatory looking circular building, which took quite a few tries and over an hour of building to get looking right. After shaping the roof, I detailed it up and I think it turned out pretty sweet. I placed in textured walls consisting of andesite and stone, along with some wooden walls for our entrance section. With the exterior pretty much done, I headed inside to build my much anticipated interior. It consisted of bookshelves, of course, lining the corners of the walls with chairs and tables running through the middle. I added plenty of pot plants and lanterns, along with a carpet that leads over to the ladder that takes you up to the second floor where we simply have more bookshelves. Finishing up, I decided the middle area was the perfect spot for an intricate chandelier, so naturally, I added one in. This next building is actually a tannery, and for some reason, I thought it was a horse stable, so I ended up just basically not even using the original building, but oh well. I made this one into a long rectangular shape and added this arched roof design to kind of highlight the three separated pens I wanted to add below. I filled in all the details along with a little roofed area to the side for hay storage, added some lanterns, and built the pen areas consisting of a grass floor along with cauldrons and hay too. Onto the town well, this one was in desperate need of upgrading from the previous blocky abomination, so I used a slightly modified existing well design of mine that I built a few years ago. I think it stands the test of time, as I think it still looks pretty great. This next one is an armorer building, and I actually really loved the design with this, of how it's basically just a roof with no walls. So I made sure to continue with that idea and simply upgrade it to something a bit more detailed. Now, I wasn't completely happy with the roof I'd made, so I ended up making it a bit more bold, and I was happy with that. Next, it was onto something completely new and quite large, the town's resource storage warehouse. I played around with a couple roof styles until settling on this one, added a couple dormers on the left side to make it a bit more interesting to look at, and continued on with adding the walls, of which I wanted to be pretty open, so I went with a single layer of stone and fences on top. For the interior, I decided on an aesthetically pleasing layout with some tables and a central shelf containing more chests. On to another completely new and quite large building, the Town Hall. This is where everyone in the village will gather for meetings, so it needed to be pretty big. To make it more interesting, I felt a big stone tower in this area would work well, so I played around with some sizes and built a roof, which in hindsight looks slightly phallic, but oh well. I continued on with adding in the walls for the main building, opting to use textured andesite and stone for the bottom floor and our bone and quartz on the top. I sprinkled in some windows along with pot plants to keep it interesting, and then it was time to head on inside. I felt this space here would work the best for the actual meeting area for the villagers, and then I finished up with the interior with adding heaps of lanterns, indoor plants, tables, and other decorations. Now, we only had 2 actual house buildings, so we definitely needed a couple more, and for this first one I made an L shape with 2 stories. I filled in the exterior walls, making sure to add plenty of windows and decorations along the way. After playing around with a few window designs, it was onto the interior. We did have quite a bit of space, so I made sure to utilize it well by adding a bed, crafting area, furnaces, and more. For the 4th and final house, I went with another L shape, this time without the front extension, if that makes sense. I filled in the walls with our textured bone blocks and smooth quartz, adding windows with campfires above and fence gates below. After slapping in a door, it was of course onto the interior. I laid this one out a bit differently, also adding a nice house plant right in the middle. It was at this point I'd realized I forgot to add chimneys on, so I got that done, and also decided our other house here could use a little outdoor fenced area, so I added that in along with a roof above consisting of campfires and trapdoors. With all the buildings finally done, it was time to give the town a makeover, starting with removing the trees and expanding the area. The first building I placed in was our town hall, smack bang right in the middle, and I also felt it could use a cobblestone foundation. Next up, I placed in our butcher shop building and terraformed the surrounding landscape to smoothen it off. To the left of the town hall, I pasted in the library and began adding in a path with a bit more terraforming. Next, I pasted in the first house we upgraded along with shoveling in more paths to connect up the existing buildings. Onto the back right area of the village, I flattened off this location and pasted in 2 of our upgraded houses. Towards the front of the village, I pasted another house and then began construction of a waterfall that'd lead down to a pond right in front of the town hall. Honestly, building ponds and waterfalls are among one of my most favorite things to build, so I made sure to make this one the perfect little spot to hang out if you're a Minecraft villager. I also planted a bunch of tulips in this flat spot just above the pond and added more grass around too. Now it was onto the simple task of pasting in more houses and worker buildings into spots I felt they worked the best. With those buildings added in, I also found the perfect spot to add our horse stable along with our resource storage building too. Next, I decided to change the path from the standard villager style pathway into a full path instead, as I felt it helped frame the village a little better. The village was still looking a little sparse, so I continued filling in the rest of the empty spots with more houses and job site buildings along with the well too. Next it was onto my favourite part, adding the details, starting with the lamppost design. I felt my classic standard medieval lamppost design would work well, and I pasted it along all of the paths absolutely everywhere. The town's grass situation was looking pretty flat, and this is where the Flora command for World Edit comes in super handy, so I utilised it to add grass everywhere. On to the next detail, which honestly adds so much life to any village, piles of barrels, chests, and other details. I also made sure to top them with candles and other decorations, as it's just such a simple yet extremely effective decoration to add everywhere. I felt the waterfall could use some love, so I textured it with andesite along with adding buttons too. I also took the time to add oak leaves draping along the landscape here as well. And now for the final detail, some custom spruce trees. There were some bare spots that I felt would suit a little tree the best, so I designed one and pasted it around everywhere. Alright, and that just about does it for our fully transformed Spruce Village. If you want to download this world that contains the full village along with every separated build, be sure to check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.